3rd of February 2023. In this Skidmark, we want to talk about numbers. We've got a situation that these politicians, they stand there on the podiums and they throw numbers around like you can't believe. The problem we have is that the average person do not really understand exactly what the hell that politician is talking about. And in South Africa, 95% of those politicians themselves don't have a fucking clue what they are talking about. They throw numbers, millions, billions, trillions. To them, that is just a word, but there is no reality in his mind. Now, a few days ago, I saw this interesting post on Telegram, and that made me think. Just listen to what this guy is saying. Trillions and trillions. You often hear the media, politicians and financial analysts casually toss around the word trillion without appreciating what it means. A trillion is a massive, almost unfathomable number. The human brain has trouble understanding something so huge. So let me try to put it into perspective. If you earned 1 rand per second, it would take 11 days to make R1 million. If you earned 1 rand per second, it would take 31.5 years to make R1 billion. And if you earned 1 rand per second, it would take 31,688 years to make R1 trillion. So that's how enormous a trillion is. When politicians carelessly spend and print money measured in the trillions, you are in dangerous territory. And government corruption in the SOEs was estimated at 3.4 trillion rand. Now this made me think, and then I made this table to make it possible to get a better idea. And I said, okay, let's take 1 rand, and you are earning 1 rand per second. In 60 minutes, that's an hour, that is 60 rand. No, sorry, 60 rand a minute. In an hour, it's 3,600 rand. In 8 shifts of an hour, that is a day work normally, 28,800 rand per shift. Now, let's just stop for a moment there. There's nobody that earns this type of money in South Africa. 28,000 rand per shift. That means 144,000 rand per week. That is 3 million rand per month. That is 38 million rand per year. And in a 40-year lifetime, that is 1.5 billion rand. So in your lifetime, on averages, you will earn 1.5 billion rand if you earned 1 rand per second, but you don't earn that. Now, if we keep to the 1 rand per second, it will take 660 workers to get into R1 trillion. Think about that. Let that sink in. 660 workers will have to work for 40 years at 1 rand per second to make 1 trillion rand. And then let's take it a little bit further and try and make it a little bit more understandable. The South African minimum wage is 23 rand per hour. That is 38 cents per minute. That is about, this thing rounds up, but it's about, let's call it 1 cent per second. That is 184 rand per day. That's 4,048 rand per month. That's 48,500 per year. And that is 1.9 million in a lifetime of 40 years. So one worker will earn 1.9 million rand in his lifetime. 600 workers will bring you into the billions. 600 workers, think about that. 550,000 workers will bring you into R1 trillion. Imagine that. That is more than 500,000 workers to get to 1 trillion. And then you get this Sezulu woman, and they are pissing R1 billion out on a soccer team sponsorship. R1 billion. So that is the earnings of 600 workers for 40 years. Think about that. These are massive numbers. But these guys that are throwing it around don't understand. Now you must bring this, I've given you now some information here and a little bit more table so that you can try and wrap your own mind around the size of the numbers that they're talking about. 500 billion were pissed out with a COVID scam. Ramaphosa is busy with a 1.4 trillion rand green fucking scheme concocted between him and Biden. 1.4 trillion. Think about that. This is massive numbers. And they just throw them out, and nobody really understands what it means. So, think about this, and then you see that little pipsqueak that has now been appointed as the mayor of Johannesburg. Just imagine him throwing around numbers in the millions. Julius Malema throwing numbers around in the billions. Think for yourself. Do they actually understand how much money that is? Do they understand how much money? South Africa has got 60 million, roughly 60 million people. About half of them doesn't work. The other half of that, most probably is employed. So we're looking at a quarter of the population. A quarter of the population is 15 million. 15 million. 15 million. And here you can see, you need 500,000 to get at 1 trillion rands. So that 15 million will give you 30 trillion rand. Roughly, these are rough, I'm just averaging and making it rough to give you an idea. So that workforce can get to about 30 trillion rand. But these guys are pissing it out every day in their speeches and so forth. Look at what our national debt is already. Your children that hasn't been born yet is going to pay, their third and fourth generation are still going to pay off on the debt that exists today. Think about that. It is time that each and every one of us in South Africa get off this fucking racism horse. That thing is going nowhere. Nowhere. You need bright minds to manage this country. Bright minds. Just think about the ridiculousness of that little guy from nowhere that is now the mayor of the biggest city and with obviously the biggest budget in the country. And they ask him, what is your priorities for your first 100 days? And he says, potholes, for fuck's sakes. In any case, I hope this is informative and you find this interesting. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing.